last video, we talked about how to access different elements inside a sequence in general. And then with sequences, we know we have three different sequences. We have a string type, list type, and tuple type. So in this video, I'm going to talk about updating. So the last one was about accessing. This one is all about updating your sequence. When it comes to updating, I would like to go back to the definition of a list and tuple. And this word mutable becomes very, very important. So mutable versus immutable. So when it comes to updating, that means you are going to change the values inside your sequence. And the only sequence you can do it to is type list. Type list is the only sequence that we know so far that is mutable. So basically, this is not possible for other type of sequences that we have here. We can only update the elements inside a list. If you try to do it for a tuple or for a string, it's going to give you an error message. And we are going to show that here in a second. Okay, now let's see what it is, what we can do, and what that update means in general. So in the last video, again, we were able to access the elements inside different sequences. And I'm going to run this one more time in this. And you see we have 4s because 4 that we have here are sitting at index number 2. To access, you basically need the name of your sequence and then its index number, what index number you are trying to reach. And then that gives you that value. All right, so now let's talk about how you update an information inside a list. And again, you cannot update information inside other data types, like for instance, a string or a tuple. Okay, so to access or to change something or update something, first of all, we need to know what we want to change. So if you want, for instance, to change this value 1 to something else, you need to first access that element. So I'm going to say, okay, in sequence 1, at index number 1, I have a value, right? And similar to updating a value, changing a value, reassigning a value when we had other variables, you use this assignment operator to do that. So you say, okay, I have, like, for instance, let's try something else. I have this variable that has a value of 5, and then in the next line, I'm going to reassign it to something else. I'm going to put 10 in it. So in line 14, variable is 5, and then in line 15, you change it to 10. It's the same concept. You're reassigning it, you're changing it, you're saying, okay, delete this part, delete this value, and put something else inside that box for me. With lists, remember, they're sectioned. And the nice thing about lists is you can individually access those sections. With tuples and strings, you cannot do that. You cannot go inside a tuple and say, okay, I just want to change this piece, this section of that, or this slice of it. It won't allow you to do it. But with lists, it will allow you to change small changes inside your list as you go. Okay, so let's try it. So I'm going to say my sequence 1, index number 1, holds the value of 1 at this moment. I don't care. You can print it if you want to, but I want to change it to something else. I want to change it to 100. I want to take that value and replace it with 100 that I have. If I do that and say, okay, print sequence 1 for me, it's going to, and we can do it 1 before and 1 after that assignment and see the differences between the two. So if I run this one, in the first one, before we make any changes, it was 6, 1, and 4. And as soon as we made the changes, it is 604. So we only changed that one value that we had inside the list. So if you want to change it to anything else, you can do that. So let's say I want to make it 5, and it simply changes it to the value that you ask it to. You can change multiple values. So I'm changing index number 1. Let's say I also want to change index number 2 to something else. Let's say I want to have 12 in it, and as soon as you do it, it basically change the index number 1 first, and then it goes into the next line, line 16, and change the value in index number 2 for you. Okay, so you simply go through and change the values. So let's now try this one on a different type of sequence. So let's see if we can do it for sequence 2, which is type tuple. As I discussed, tuples are immutable. That means you cannot just go ahead and say, okay, I want to change this part of that tuple. It won't allow you because they are immutable. You cannot simply go through it and say, I just want to make this a small change to the tuple. So if you run that one, it's going to give us an error message. It says, tuple object does not support item assignment. You cannot change the values inside a tuple. And same thing with a string. If you try to change values inside a string, it's going to give you an error message. It's not supporting that item assignment. So the only data type that we have so far that allows you modifications to it is type list. The other types, you need to completely destroy the previous value that you had and reassign it. So if I want to change sequence 2, I must say, okay, the entire sequence 2 is equal to something else. Is equal to A, B, and C. So I'm reassigning the entire thing into 1. I'm not changing any, I'm not making any changes in place, okay? But with the previous one, with the one that we had, we were just making one small change in place for our list. We weren't changing the other stuff. And that is a very important thing that we have. I'm printing the wrong values here. For instance, there are some information that should not be changed, like social security numbers. It is safer that you store them inside a tuple. That way, no one accidentally changes them. So you keep them safe, you create them, you store all of the information, and you make sure no one changes them. Because if someone tries to change them, they are going to get an error message. So if the change is absolutely necessary, then they can think of ways to do it. But Python is going to try to force that and make sure they understand they're trying to change something that should not be changed. With lists, you can modify them, you can change them and add or delete stuff from them after you create them and do small changes to it as you go. So this first one was changing a value inside your list. I'm going to get these two out for now because we are only focusing on a list. And we changed the value inside the list. Now we are going to try some other stuff that goes with when you're updating a list. So there are a bunch of operations that you can do. So this first one was to change a value, and then we will have append, we will have insert, we will have delete, and some other stuff that we are going to talk about one by one. Okay, so we changed the value, so let's do update as well because we update a single value in here. So the next operation I'm going to have here is append. So with append, insert, and some other functions that we have here, there is this concept of method. I'm going to create a separate video for it and talk about what methods are. But for now, just remember we have functions in Python and methods in Python. And both are very, very similar. There are a bunch of they're codes that gives you functionality, that gives you something to do, okay? They create different properties for different objects that you have in your code. So append allows you to add something to the end of your list. So if I have my sequence, I just simply need to say, okay, I have this sequence dot append, and that is how you use a method. You use this dot notation to do that. But similar to function, they all end with parentheses. So with append, you need to pass a value to it and say what you want to append to your sequence. It is like saying, all right, I have this hair color, is me, is part of me, and I want to change it. I say, okay, go ahead and change the color of my head. So I'm doing something to this object that I have, to myself. That is what you're saying. So you have this sequence, and you're saying, go and add something to the end of this list, to the end of this object. So it does that for you. So I'm going to say, okay, add 10 to it. So after this operation, you're going to have 6, and then we change the value in index number 1. So you have 5, 4, and 10 is going to be added to the end of that sequence. So let's go ahead and run this one and hear what we see. So this is the original list, and then after making those 2 changes, the value in index number 1 has changed to 5, and then we appended 10 to it. So you can append as many values as you want. So you basically go through and add them to the end of the list that you have. So you can have as many append and basically go through the order and add them to the end of your your list. Okay, so next one that we are going to practice with is this method insert. And insert allows you to add something in a specific location, in a specific index number. So let's say I want to insert something between 6 and this value. Actually, let me get this one to make it less confusing. So between 6 and 1. So I want to add something here. So if I want to add something here, if I want to, let's say I want the value 5 to be there, right? So if I have that value 5 in there, after I put it, like I know it's going to be between 6 and 1, what index number is going to have if I put it there? So 6 is index number 0, and 5 is going to hold index number 1 after I put it in. So we need to know that. So here, what I'm going to say is sequence.insert, open and close parentheses. And it's going to take, as you see, there are some information there. It needs the index number that it is going to go and set, and then the value that you want to have in there. So we want it to be at index number 1, and we want to have value 5 in there. So if we do that, we are going to see 6, 5 is going to be between 6 and 1, 4, 10, and 15. Those are the 2 values that we appended before having the insert. Okay, so we inserted a value. If you want to insert it some other place, like between, like, so you have, let's do 2. So you have index number 0, index number 1. So it's going to be here between 1 and 4 this time because I changed the index number to 2. So if we do that, now we have 6, 1, and 5 is between 1 and 4, and it's going to hold index number 2 because we asked it to be at index number 2. And then the second one is basically the value that you want to insert. With delete or taking something from a list, there are 2 different ways you can do it. There is the delete method or the remove method. So you can use either one of them to complete the remove. They're slightly different from each other in the way that we use them. First, I'm going to use the remove, which is very similar to the previous ones. So you're going to say, all right, I want to remove something from my list. And what you're passing to it is the value that you want to remove. So in my list, let's say I want to remove value 1 from it. So if I do that, it's going to go through, make all of the changes, and when it gets here, it looks at the current list and removes 1 from it. So here, value 1 is gone, right? Or if you want to remove something else, let's say I want to remove 6 from it as well. So if you run it, it's going to go ahead and remove 1 and then remove 6 from it. Okay, and you can look at, we can put this one back here so we can look at what it was before we removed the stuff. So we had 6, 1, 5, 4, 10, and 15, and then we remove both 6 and 1 from our list. Okay, so you can remove as many items as you want from your list. Just be mindful that if you remove a stuff or whenever you're adding a stuff, when you're adding a stuff, you're making your list to grow. It gets bigger. When you're removing a stuff, you're making your list to shrink. You're making it smaller. Okay, that was the first way of taking something out of your list. The other method is delete. So you can say this is slightly different on how it comes. So delete, as you see, it turned orange, and that is because it is a method. It is a keyword, sorry, it's a keyword. So delete sequence 1, and with delete, you need to pass what index number you want to delete from it. And because it is index number, it comes inside square brackets. So let's say I want to delete, I'm going to take these two out so we can see the full list first and then see that index number is deleted. Let's say we want to delete something that is at index number 2, right? And right now at index number 2, we have 4, but we added 5 to it, so it's going to be 5. So you're inserting 5 and then deleting 5 the next time. So here we go. So we have 6, 1, 5, 4, 10, and 15. 5 is at index number 2. And then in the next command, what you have is, okay, delete whatever is at index number 2. And then it deletes 5, right? So with the two different methods, with delete, you're deleting, you need index number. With remove, you need the value, right? It gives you two different options from taking stuff outside of your list. So these are the main operations that we have when it comes to changing a list. There are some more that I'm going to discuss in the next video.